大家好，很多人告诉我你怎么说中文。我觉得什么人都可以，如果我可以，你也可以。这是怎么做？ When I was 13 years old, my family and I went to China. It was our first big trip out of the country, and I had never seen anything like it before. We went on a cruise down the Yangtze River, we saw the Three Gorges, we saw Shanghai, we saw Xi'an and the Terracotta Warriors. We went to the Temple of Heaven, we went to the Great Wall, we went to the Forbidden City, the Summer Palace in Beijing, we saw acrobatic shows, we ate amazing food, and it blew my mind. I loved it. So when we got back home, I remember taking this tea canister from the cupboard that we had and sitting it on the island, and I began to write. I began to copy the Chinese characters that were on that tea canister. And I remember saying to my mom, "Mom, I want to learn Chinese." So my mom looked and looked, and she found a Chinese Sunday school that I went to with a bunch of little Chinese children. And it was difficult. It wasn't exactly your typical white boy Chinese learning experience. But I was learning, and I was lost, but I loved it. So I went back to my mom and I said, "Mom, I want to learn Chinese every day." So we went to the Chinese language head of that school, and it turned out that he was the head of Chinese at Northwestern University. And so he invited me at age 13 to go and study with them. He sat me down and we had a couple lessons just to gauge where I was at, which I never really had any instruction in Chinese before. And he told me, "Okay, let's skip Chinese 1 and go to Chinese 2. So I thought, okay. And in the middle of Chinese 2, the summer in Northwestern was the hardest thing I've ever done academically, not only up until age 13, but ever in my life, including up to now. And so we were learning 50 characters a day, we were learning sentence structures, we were learning so many difficult things, memorizing text. But I loved it. I went on to study Chinese for 4 years at Northwestern. I got to study abroad in Beijing. And learning Chinese was one of the best things that ever happened to me. Not just because of the language or the culture or the people that I met, but because learning Chinese taught me how to learn. There are 5 things that whether we want to learn Chinese or anything else, we have to be able to do to learn it effectively, to learn it well. The first is we have to define X and our relationship to it. So what do I mean? I had to see Chinese as a skill that was learnable, and I had to see myself as the type of person that could learn Chinese. Whether you want to learn Chinese or anything else in life, whether you want to be great at sales, if you think that sales is something slippery and slimy and you think that you're the type of person that's bad at sales, it's going to be impossible to get past that first point. So whatever it is that you're trying to learn, we have to start from there. We have to start from properly defining what it is that we're doing. This is something that is learnable. This is something that is good and beautiful. And I am the type of person that can do this. We have to do that before we can go to the next step. The next step is to break things down into pieces so small that it's laughable. Now, a lot of experts say that the hardest thing about accomplishing anything is just getting started. So then the question becomes, how do we get started? In Chinese, the way that I got started, and I think that we all should, is to break it down so simple that it's almost a joke, that we're almost insulted that someone is even asking us to do something so simple that's maybe a 100th or a 1,000th of what we would be asking of ourselves. Let me give you an example. This is the first character you learn in Chinese, and it means 1. Just one simple line. This is the character for 2 in Chinese, and it means 2. 2 lines. And this is the character for 3. So now we see that within about 5 seconds, we just learned 3 words in Chinese. We took something that we thought was impossible, that was so scary that you have to be a genius to do. We defined it as something that's learnable, that I am the type of person that can do, that you are as well. And then we broke it down into pieces so simple that now we're starting. Now we're already past the hardest part. These 2 pieces are by far the hardest. Almost everybody gets stuck on these two. But these are how you get past those two things. This, see, looks like a little bit like a person walking. That's a character for person. You see how this looks a little bit like a mountain? Is the word for mountain. So now we have 1, 2, 3, person, mountain. We've learned 5 words in about 60 seconds, and I bet you won't forget them even after this video is done. So now we see that we're moving. Chinese is learnable. We're doing it. It's possible. And you don't have to be a genius. The next thing that we have to do after we get started is we have to break things down into meaningful categories. Let me give you an example. This is the character for woman. This is the character for child. If we do woman plus child, we have the character for good. So now we just learned 3 more characters, and we're understanding them within the context of their meaning together in groups and categories. Let me give you another example. This is the character for electricity. This is the character for speech. So if we put electricity and speech together, we have the telephone. Makes sense, electric and speech. So now we start to see that Chinese is being broken down into categories that really make sense. I want to show you another quick example. In Chinese, there's something called radicals. So every single word has a radical, and the radical is the meaning part of the character, and we see them in lots of different characters. So, for example, these 3 lines together mean water. So if we do these 3 characters here are all related to ocean, river, lake. You see how they all have those 3 lines? They all have to do with water. So you see that now we're breaking down the characters into categories, and the categories make sense, and now we can use those categories to continue to make bigger pieces. So now we've defined X, we've defined Chinese as something that's learnable, we've defined ourselves as somebody as the type of person that learns Chinese. We've broken it into such small pieces like learning the word for 1 and the word for 2, something so small that it's laughable, that it's almost insulting, but it got us started. And now we're learning, and now we're breaking things into categories. And now you're starting to learn Chinese probably way more than you ever imagined you could. And you can also apply this to anything else. The next important thing is to have the right templates, the right teachers, and the right practice. Chinese is a very specific language. There are some languages where you can a little bit get away with saying something the wrong way, and it's not necessarily the end of the world. You'll look a little bit silly, but that's okay. In Chinese, it's a little bit more difficult than that. Let me show you what I mean. If we say this word, every single word in Chinese has a tone. A tone means how you say the word. So this would mean a down tone. So you say the word down. The way that the tone you say it, so s. But it could also be a high tone, or swooping tone, or rising tone. So every single word in Chinese is linked to one of these tones, and you have to say the correct tone with the right word, or you just said a different word. And sometimes it's not that big a deal, but sometimes it sounds really stupid and bad. So for example, this means the number 4, s. But if we say s, swooping tone, it means death. So that's probably one of those things you wouldn't want to necessarily get wrong because you look pretty silly. So whatever it is that we're learning, maybe especially Chinese, but really anything, we have to make sure that we're following the right way, that we're doing it the right way, that we have the right teacher, the right templates, the right books, that we're following the right things. We have to make sure we're doing it the right way. So attention to detail and then practice. So in Chinese, they do each character. This is the character for 4. So when they practice, they would write this over and over and over and over and over again. They're not listening to music, they're not watching TV, they're not on Facebook while they're writing it. You have to be completely focused, saying the words, saying the tone, going through the strokes. Even in Chinese, each word has its own stroke. So it goes top to bottom and left to right. So you have to do the strokes in a certain order or the character won't look right. It might sound silly, but people will know it doesn't look right. And hopefully there's not any mistakes on mine. So again, are we following the right templates? Do we have the right teacher? Are we practicing the right way? If we want to get great at Chinese or anything else, we have to make sure we're following the proper template. Just like Google Maps, we have to put in the right address if we want to get where we want to go. And finally, the last thing, that's a heart. I know it probably doesn't really look like one. Looks like it a little more from this angle, but probably still not really from this angle, is that we have to love the game. We have to love what we're doing. I was able to learn Chinese not because I was able to just push myself through and get through every moment and cringe through it, but finally I made it. It wasn't that way. It pulls you because you love it, because you love the process. So I would really encourage anybody, whether it's a job or if you're spending a massive amount of time doing something that you don't want to do, you may want to consider something else because you really need that love to produce something amazing. Not only that, but there's competition. Somebody else who loves that thing is going to push us out in business or in other things in life. And it's just, life is too short to be doing anything else. I mean, if you're doing something you don't love, you're neglecting other things while you're focusing on that thing that you don't love. So you really, really have to have a love to learn something big, to accomplish something big. So that's it. You've got it. You've got everything you need to know. You know how to learn Chinese. You know how to learn anything else. Step 1, define what that thing is and our relationship to it. Define Chinese as this is a language that's awesome, that's amazing, that I would love to learn and it is learnable, and then your relation to it. I am the type of person that can learn this. I got this. I'm great with languages. You could do that same type of thinking towards anything that you want to learn. Step 2, break it down into pieces that are so small that it's laughable. The character for 1, for 2, the 2 lines, for 3, the 3 lines. So easy that it gets you moving. It gets you past that hard first part that you're scared to do, but now you are doing it, and now you're probably 50% of the way just because you've defined those things and you've gotten started. 3, put things into categories, put things into groups that make sense that you could build on, like the woman and the child equals good, like electricity and speech equals telephone. And then we start to build and we start to gain momentum. We have to ensure, number 4, that we have the right teachers, that we have the right practice, the right templates, we're following the right things to get us where we want to go, and we're doing it with detail and focus and doing it deliberately. And finally, probably just as important or more than anything else, we have to love it. Our emotion has to be in it. We have to be involved. It has to fill us up and pull us so we're not feeling like we're pushing, but we're getting to be part of this amazing process. So guys, now whether your dream is to learn Chinese or to be great at sales or persuasion or speaking or whatever it is that you love or want to do, you can apply all of these same steps to that thing. And now you know that you can do it, that it's not as scary, that it's not as hard as you thought that it was going to be. I know that you can do it. I did it. You can do it. So go do it. 谢谢. Thank you.